Welcome to our rock and roll nightmare, everybody. It is time for the Fortress of Rock. It's Friday night, April the 25th, 2025. As always, glad to have you aboard. I am the Ayatollah of rock and rolla, the Maestro, Kevin Crane. Appreciative beyond belief that you stuck with us here as we move into late April after a couple weeks, as we call it, our forced vacation. Not a permanent vacation, a forced vacation for a couple weeks. And I know in the world of podcasting, everybody gets all up in arms. You have to keep the content flowing each and every week. You can't stop. Well, sometimes forces beyond our control step in and make life difficult. But we soldier on. We are rock soldiers. So now we're back in the flow. We're back to where we should be once again. Each and every Friday night, the Fortress of Rock will regale you with tales from the past, the present, in terms of classic rock and roll. And of course, we will always look into the future when it comes to the music that we all know and love. So, of course, segment one is News of the World, our tribute to the late, great Freddie Mercury and Queen. This is where we look at what's going on currently in the world of rock and roll, touring news, the headlines, the scandals, the gossip, occasionally delving into TMZ territory. And we start off with, I will not apologize for this. This is on The Who. This is, if you've seen the video, and I believe I directed you to this video last weekend. Our last episode, of course, was April the 18th, coming back from our extended forced break. I mentioned that there was a video out there at the Royal Albert Hall showing The Who performing, and Roger Daltrey was not happy with drummer Zak Starkey. Then the word came down that Zak Starkey had been dismissed from The Who after being part of their touring group for 29 years. Of course, in the end, The Who right now is only, technically, and I'm sure financially, only Roger Daltrey and Pete Townshend. But now Pete Townshend comes out this week and says, no. We've mended fences. We had a lack of communication. Great song by Rat, by the way. So Zak Starkey is back with The Who. And of course, Zak Starkey, son of Ringo Starr. So we had these communication issues. It's pretty obvious. It would take an absolute dolt to not see that Daltrey had a moment on stage where he didn't like what was going on. And I'm not criticizing Roger Daltrey. He's a control freak. It's obvious. He wants things the way he wants things. And if you're passionate about something, and you kids out there know this, whatever you do in life, whether it's your job, whether it's your hobby, you're passionate about it. And Daltrey, for some reason, at this Royal Albert Hall show, just did not like the way Zak Starkey was playing. Last week we reported about this whole blood clot thing, and was Zak Starkey playing differently than he had in the past because of it. So again, Pete Townshend says, and I give Pete credit. Pete obviously cares about The Who. Sometimes it seems like he's a little bit ambivalent, but I think it's deep down in his bones that he cares about The Who. So he tried to salvage the relationship between Zach Starkey and Roger Daltrey, where he did admit that Zach had to tighten up. That's a direct quote from Pete. He had to tighten up his drumming. So there, Pete is mending fences, saying Roger maybe was right. Maybe something needs to change with how Zach is playing drums right now. And then he even took the hit on himself. And again, watching that video, again, Royal Albert Hall, the song is over. You can tell Pete's having issues. He has to sit down on a chair. Did not know he had just undergone knee surgery. So he was not 100%. So the whole show was doomed, most likely from the start. So again, hopefully they figured things out. This is the kind of stuff that happens in rock and roll. You got big egos. You got perfectionism, eccentricities. So now everything's patched up. The Who, in their current configuration, they're back together again. Now, next week here on the Fortress of Rock, we will spend some time, probably too much time, but we will spend some time on the announcement of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees. The fan vote is over. And yes, I did vote as many days as humanly possible. I did not max out my vote, because you were allowed to vote for 7 of the performers nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year. I only voted 5. Billy Idol, Bad Company, White Stripes, Black Crowes. Who am I missing? Soundgarden. Oh my God. Soundgarden, Billy Idol. Am I getting them all? Black Stripes. Oh my God, what a mess I'm making of this. But I only voted for 5. Somehow you can sift through all this. Bad Company, Soundgarden, Billy Idol, White Stripes, Black Crowes. There you go. Those are the 5 that I voted for. Again, as many days as possible. Now the fan vote, as I mentioned, is closed. Fish. Oh, God. Fish ran away with the fan vote. Although Bad Company made a little bit of a run at the end. Joe Cocker made a little bit of a push at the end. Of course, Billy Joel came out and basically penned a letter to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame board expressing why he thinks Joe Cocker should be in, which is bullshit. This is why the whole thing is a travesty, and I'm sorry I cursed. I know I'm not supposed to curse on the Fortress of Rock. I apologize. But the only promotion you should get is if you go out on tour. Okay? If Fish wants to say during one of their shows, hey, please go out and vote for us on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame fan vote website. I got no problem with self-promotion. But what Billy Joel has no right, in my opinion, and you guys know I love Billy Joel, he has no right to single out Joe Cocker and go, I'm going to put it out there in the public and pen a letter to the Rock Hall of Fame board saying Joe Cocker should be in. then where are all the other rock and roll performers, Hall of Fame or otherwise, not supporting? Who's out there supporting Bad Company? Who's out there supporting the White Stripes? Who's out there supporting Oasis or whoever is on the ballot? That's garbage. That's garbage. I'm sorry. I lost some respect for Billy Joel. And it's not because if he loves Joe Cocker, that's fine. I don't. And that's fine too. But Billy Joel has a hell of a lot more pull than I do in the music world. That's not right. Shut your yap and let things play out the way they're going to play out. The arrogance of performers, celebrities, continues to amaze me. So, of course, Billy Joel, his endorsement pushed Joe Cocker up past Soundgarden, which is still to me a travesty. Now, Soundgarden, the cutoff is the top 7. You are allowed to vote for 7. So, supposedly the top 7 in the fan vote will get that one vote that matters next to nothing in the end. And again, this is why Billy Joel's endorsement is garbage. Absolute garbage. It's so much like politics. A massive flaw in the system. The White Stripes no, they're not. It's going to take a long time for the White Stripes to get in, which I would prefer them to get in above so many other of these performers. Let's just hope that the strong showing from Bad Company and Billy Idol, they get in. And Soundgarden. I would finally like to see Soundgarden get in, and let's open the door for Alice in Chains the next time when they're looking at a grunge era band to get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. All right. This weekend we have Pink Floyd at Pompeii, 1972. We recently had a surprising success story for rock and roll concert movies or rock and roll documentaries at the box office with Led Zeppelin, as that movie, Becoming Led Zeppelin, made over $10 million at the box office, which is pretty good, I think, for a rock and roll documentary. So now we get this lost film from Pink Floyd performing with no crowd, no audience, at Pompeii in 1972. As we record here Friday night, again, April the 25th, 2025, Pink Floyd at Pompeii at 654 theaters in North America on a Thursday night made over $1.25 million at the box office. Very, very impressive. 1.29 million to be a little bit more precise. And you guys know I am not a fan of Pink Floyd, but looking at the big picture, this is good. This is good for rock and roll. Success on the big screen, whether it's a Fathom Events showing or whether it's more of an expanded release like this or like Led Zeppelin. And for these movies to be making very, very good money at the box office, this is a good thing for classic rock and roll. Now, I did mention, of course, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame fan vote is closed. And I did mention that next week we will review the inductees, because they will be announced. Oh, I hate this. This is another reason why I can't stand the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They've been doing this now for at least a couple years. They will announce the latest inductees to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame on American Idol, Sunday, April the 27th. Because American Idol is all rock and roll. It's so rock and roll. What a joke. I would prefer just to have them announce it online, really, than to embarrass themselves by aligning the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with American Idol. Please give me a break. Now, I will admit, a guilty pleasure of mine is wrestling, professional wrestling. I have dived in and out ever since I was in my late teens and early 20s. There are times when I have been a devoted fan. There are times when I just basically shunned it. COVID and the pandemic brought me back in, because really there's nothing else going on. You weren't getting any movies, TV shows, no production from Hollywood. Sports, we're trying to figure out how to handle it. But because of the fact that wrestling is based in Florida, and they were the least restrictive when it came to COVID protocols, I got back into wrestling. So now, I did watch this past weekend WrestleMania 41, and there has always been a very solid connection between the world of rock and roll and wrestling. You can name Cyndi Lauper, of course, one of the most prominent examples. Her and Captain Lou Albano. This year, Living Color appears on stage in Las Vegas to play Cult of Personality live to introduce CM Punk. Slayer's Kerry King appeared as well to help introduce, I believe it was Damian Priest. And then a few years ago you had The Edge. Now he's moved on to a different wrestling faction, but Edge and his team, which is still around, but a very, very different version, a very different permutation of the Judgment Day, used to play Alter Bridge all the time for their intro music. So there is a very tight-knit connection there. And if you have not seen Kerry King's performance or Living Color's performance, you can get on there on YouTube and watch them. They are great. As a Living Color fan, personally, it was phenomenal. Fantastic to see them introducing CM Punk. And of course, financially, for them, every time CM Punk comes out onto the stage, plays Cult of Personality as his intro music, they get paid. So let's think about that. Let's think about the fact that this is another revenue stream to keep these performers and these acts going. Now, I've got one moment of silence this week here on the Fortress of Rock, and this one hit me hard because we don't normally talk a lot about the people behind the scenes. We do on occasion, but very few people, whether it's engineers, producers, heads of record labels, they don't get their proper respect, maybe. Because in the end, you've just got to say the musicians are the ones who make the music. They write it, they perform it, they sing it. But you do have to have people out there, at least you used to in the old days, scouring the clubs, scouring the arenas, trying to find that next great new performer. And then you had to have somebody behind the board to make their sound come out, whether it was on cassette, on LP, on CD, or even on 8-track. Who was the guy who could work the board well enough to bring out the best in that band? So Roy Thomas Baker passed away here this past week. And Roy Thomas Baker, to me, is one of the greatest rock and roll producers ever. He's right up there with Robert John Mutt Lange in terms of the quality of the albums he produced. Ted Templeman, of course, I would put in there as a Van Halen fan. Robert John Mutt Lange, of course, known for Def Leppard, among others. Ted Templeman, I just said Van Halen. Roy Thomas Baker produced the first 4 Cars albums, the legendary first 4 Cars albums, along with, maybe even more impressive for me personally, the Cars. But for everybody else out there, probably he produced A Night at the Opera from Queen, Bohemian Rhapsody, producing Bohemian Rhapsody. I mean, how about that on your rock and roll resume, or in this case, your tombstone? Pretty impressive. Many other performers, many other bands that Roy Thomas Baker had a hand in producing or helping. But I will say my holy grail, the top 3 engineers and producers in rock and roll history for me personally, growing up in the late 70s and early 80s, Ted Templeman, Mutt Lange, and the late, great Roy Thomas Baker. So thoughts and prayers for Roy Thomas Baker. Peter Criss of Kiss. I don't know if this is supposed to be exceptional, encouraging news, or kind of just going to go by the wayside and kind of get moved off into the corner with a dull thud. But Peter Criss, of course, legendary drummer, the Catman in Kiss, will release his first solo album in 18 years this year. We do not have a firm date yet. We do not have a title. When we get more information, we will let you know here on the Fortress of Rock. But for right now, you'll have to be satisfied with the fact that you will get new solo music from Peter Criss here in 2025. Concert news. Live music news to wrap things up here in News of the World. We'll start off with a little bit of a downer note. And we saw this a couple years ago. You begin to wonder if these performers and these musicians just push things too far. Now, I will once again reiterate, if you're passionate about something, anything, it doesn't have to be music. That is what we discuss here, but people will work until they die, literally work until they drop dead at their desk if they love their job. Unfortunately, even if they don't, but if they have found their passion, if they have found their path, they will work at it and do it until they die, literally. And I don't want to see this happen for Carlos Santana. Now, a few years ago, he had an issue where he had a dehydration problem on stage and had to back out of a number of shows. And Carlos Santana is up there in years. This is why I'm concerned. And I'm trying to balance respect for him and his passion for music with my concern and wanting him to live out his life to the fullest. And if he has to drop out of performing live and it buys him a couple years, do it. Every moment, every second is precious. But now we've got another issue with Carlos Santana. He has collapsed yet again a few days ago from dehydration at a sound check before a show in Texas. Subsequently, he's had to cancel 2 shows in the Lone Star State. Once again, we'll keep you updated, but I'm beginning to get extremely concerned about Carlos Santana in terms of maybe it's time to really back it off for your own well-being. Your family, I'm sure, cares about you to the point where they want you to survive longer, many, many more years. And if you're pushing yourself too hard, Carlos, please don't. Please don't. We all admire the rock and roll fire, the rock and roll spirit, but in this situation, I would completely and totally understand if he bowed out, retired from the music scene completely. Great double bill that has just been announced for classic rock and rollers like you and me. Bryan Adams and Pat Benatar with Neil Giraldo. And I still to this day have a problem with that. It's Pat Benatar. And she might adore him and love him to the ends of the earth, but the fact that she gives him basically co-headlining credit still to this day bothers me. Sorry, it just does. And he's a great musician, a great guitarist, but it's Pat Benatar. It is Bryan Adams and Pat Benatar. 21 dates in the United States, just announced in October and November. Now, Bryan Adams also has an additional 19 dates in Canada, and those are running in September and October of this year. Now, I've seen Bryan Adams a couple times. I've seen Pat Benatar once last year for the first time ever. Great shows. Great shows. It should be a phenomenal double bill. Now, some of these acts that we're going to talk about here at the end are just adding a few dates onto already announced tours. Daryl Hall, of course, wants nothing more to do with John Oates, but Daryl Hall out there on tour with opening act Glenn Tilbrook. Now, see, that would be an interesting show for me personally, because I always kind of like Squeeze, and I always liked Hall and Oates. I think that would be a great show to see. They have added 8 more dates onto their tour in 2025. The current dates they've added are in the western United States in October and November of 2025. Elvis Costello has added a second leg to his tour. 22 dates in North America, running in September and October. Same thing that I just said about Daryl Hall and Glenn Tilbrook. Wouldn't mind seeing Elvis Costello for one time. I will never admit to being the biggest fan in the world of any of these performers, but you got to respect them. You got to respect the catalog. You got to respect the hits. Kansas, of course, their current lead singer just came back from a serious, scary bout with cancer, health issue. Ronnie Platt, he is back, and he better be healthy because Kansas's slate for 2025 is full and has just gotten even fuller. Kansas has added 7 more dates in the United States in August all the way through December. Then, of course, we've been talking a lot about Foreigner lately. I'm assuming these shows that I'm going to discuss here, because they go into 2026. Yes, we're already starting to talk about shows in 2026. Even though we're only in April of 2025, I assume these shows will involve Kelly Hansen. I'm assuming he'll be back in the fold. And we have documented his travel issues, his problems with being able to move freely outside of the United States. That's why Lou Gramm has come back in to the fold. But Foreigner will be playing a Las Vegas residency in March of 2026 with an orchestra. Of course, this is nothing new. This has been a trend that has been going on for, I would say, 20 years? You kids out there could verify along with me on that. But, of course, Kiss has done this. Metallica, I know Collective Soul. Many, many, many bands have performed with an orchestra. Foreigner will be doing so at the Venetian Theater in Las Vegas in March of 2026. One last thing, getting away from live music, and this will be a nice segue into breakdown. I would be remiss if I did not point out that Alice Cooper, now bear with me here, this might get a little confusing for a minute or two. And I've always said, it's interesting when I find things out that I either forgot about or that I didn't know at all when I look back at the history of rock and roll. Alice Cooper has never always been one person. Okay? The man we know as Alice Cooper right now technically changed his name in the mid-70s to Alice Cooper, and then became the solo act that we have known since the mid-70s. But before that, Alice Cooper was a band. It was a group. So now, for the first time in 50 years, the group, the band known as Alice Cooper, is getting back together. The new album is called The Revenge of Alice Cooper. It will be out on July the 25th. We do have the first single out, which you're going to have to stick around. A little bit teaser here. A little bit of a teaser. You're going to have to stick around till the end of the podcast for Wrap It Up. And then we will discuss the first single from Alice Cooper, the group. Not Alice Cooper, the solo artist. Very, very interesting. But that will do it for News of the World here on the Fortress of Rock, April the 25th, 2025, episode 191, by the way. We're closing in on our 200th episode, and I'm sure we'll do something special for that. But now we move on to Breakdown, our tribute, of course, to the late, great Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. This is where we review the best in new music, whether it's albums, songs, or concert reviews. And while we've scaled back the concerts this year, we still do have 3 concerts on the agenda for 2025, maybe a 4th coming up. One of the ones I thought we could have 5 fell through this week, so I apologize for that. I might as well tell you now, thought I might have a Night Ranger review from Gas City, Indiana, but things didn't work out, and it's fine. You obviously know I just reviewed Night Ranger live at the end of 2024, so it's all good. Hoping that once we get into late May, maybe, possibly, if I can coerce my friends into it, we will see the Black Moods live in Elkhart, Indiana. But there are 3 shows for sure coming in 2025 where we are confirmed. We have tickets. We will be going. Of course, those shows are Quiet Riot and Aldo Nova, Bush and Shinedown, and Great White and Slaughter. But for now, it's all about new albums, new songs. So we're going to start off Breakdown here with the brand new album from LA Guns. That album is Leopard Skin. Alright, as we move down into Breakdown, here's segment 2 on the Fortress of Rock on April the 25th, 2025. LA Guns. LA Guns has always been peculiar for me in terms of how much I admire them, respect them, like their music. And I love the fact that they're still out there playing and they're putting out new music every couple years. You guys know, if you've been listening to the Fortress of Rock for the past 4 years, you know that if you want to get on my good side, if you want to get on the Maestro's good side, put out new music. Show me that you still care. Show me that you still want to be a creative force in the world of rock and roll. And LA Guns have done that. So in that respect, I admire them. I love them. And of course, they also harken back to my heyday of music in the 80s. But, you know, the legend is, as we all know, you had the split between Axl Rose and Tracy Guns, and what you got was Guns N' Roses and LA Guns. Guns N' Roses went on to become a world-conquering band, Rock and Roll Hall of Famers. LA Guns never was able to rise from that second tier up to that first tier. But I still admire what Tracy Guns has done with his band throughout the years. He is devoted to it. This is his vision. This is what he wants. He's joked about the fact that, yeah, I probably made the wrong decision because I would have made a lot more money if I went the other way. I wish he wouldn't beat himself up so much about that. But at the same time, if we look at their new album, Leopard Skin, which is our featured album review here on the Fortress of Rock, I can understand his frustration. Because Leopard Skin, as an outsider, as a fan, listening to this album, is frustrating. Why is it frustrating? Because it's good, but it's not great. Most of the songs on Leopard Skin are solid, but none of them break new ground. None of them, like Guns N' Roses did, push the envelope and give us something that we'd never heard before. And this has been the problem with LA Guns throughout the years. So, we will go through Leopard Skin, 10 tracks. We will go through song by song, track by track. Now, the lead-off song is Taste It, which of course was also the first release, the first single from Leopard Skin. Yes, it has the classic 80s LA Sunset Strip sexual innuendo lyrics. I like it, though. It's a good song. But again, is it a great song? Is it a classic? No, I can't go that far. And I'm telling you right now, I'm giving you fair warning. That's how I'm going to feel about a lot of these songs on this album. Track 2 is the one we can't say. Yes, I know I slipped earlier and I did curse. And I apologize here on the Fortress of Rock. But we try to keep things clean for the kids. Lucky MFer is track 2. And this is just such a blatant. I'm not saying they're copying Guns N' Roses, because that's not fair to Tracy Guns, because he came up with this template along with Parallel 2, tied in with Axl Rose. So it's not fair to say they're copying it, because they came up with this mold. But you listen to Lucky MFer, tell me, please, I beg you, I dare you to tell me that this does not sound like, if it had been sung by Axl Rose, this was not a lost Guns N' Roses track. Again, very good song. Great song, I won't go that far. Then we move on to The Grinder, track 3, with some wicked, awesome slide guitar. I have issues with The Grinder, both good and bad. I love kind of the free form, just let everybody do what they want to do in the middle of this 3.5 minute template. And sometimes you get magic. We've seen this with Van Halen in the past, among many other bands. And The Grinder comes close to that. But again, it's not a classic. It's not stellar. Then you get to track 4, Hit and Run. Hit and Run, and this is going to be a very odd comparison. Hit and Run sounded to me like LA Guns doing the Gin Blossoms. I swear to you, if you took this song, gave it to the Gin Blossoms, Robin Wilson and the boys, they would make this a hit. At least a hit back in the late 90s. This sounds to me like a Gin Blossoms cast off done by LA Guns. I'm not, again, ripping on it. It's a decent song. I enjoyed it, but once again, doesn't elevate to the next level. So now, after we've gotten through the first 4 songs, and yes, I have been harsh and I have criticized it all, Here's the problem. Those first 4 songs are probably the best 4 songs on the album, and that's what you would expect. Best foot forward, you lead with the best stuff, and after that, the rest of the songs decide if this is going to be a new classic or just another mediocre album. So track 5 is Don't Give Me Away. Okay. Not bad. Like I said, every song on this album is tolerable, but none of them are classics. So in that way, I'm spoiling things. Now, track 6. Okay, The Fortress of Rock is, again, I'm apologizing once again for slipping and cursing earlier, because I really want this to be a nice, clean podcast so the younger generation can listen to it, start to appreciate classic rock and roll. But I'm Your Candyman, track 6 on Leopard Skin. We already had track 1. Taste It. Taste It was an obvious homage to certain sexual activities, let's put it that way, involving things, well, I don't know if I can go any further. I don't know if I can. But I'm Your Candyman is more of the same. It's more of the blatant sexual innuendo. Now, we all know the obvious champion, the king of the ring when it comes to that, is Warrant's Cherry Pie. But Warrant's Cherry Pie had the energy, the enthusiasm that just made it, pushed it beyond its cliches and made it a classic. So, for the second time in 6 songs here on Leopard Skin, LA Guns decide let's slink around and play in the muck. And we all know. You can go back if you want to. You can go all the way back to Sammy Davis Jr. and start talking about the parallels between candy and sex. Okay? And obviously here LA Guns decide we're going to go right back into that territory. And they sing about, I'm going up and down your aisles. It's, again, I am not a prude, and I am all for cherry pie, and if you can make it work and just be a little more subtle, put a little more into it. And unfortunately, I'm Your Candyman does not. It falls into this trough of mediocre debauchery that we have heard since the 80s. Then track 7 is Runaway Train, which is a nice acoustic slide guitar romp. One of the better songs on the album. But I'll say it again, does not elevate to the highest possible level. And then track 8, Follow the Money, probably one of the weaker songs on the album. Decent, but nothing spectacular. Track 9 is The Masquerade, which is the second attempt on Leopard Skin to go mid-tempo, whereas Hit and Run is the homage, the kindred spirit to something from the Gin Blossoms, who I love. So I liked Hit and Run much more than The Masquerade. I think The Masquerade fails but it's not, again, not terrible. And then the best thing I can say about the closing track, track 10, If You Wanna, didn't hate it. I'd listen to it again. Sorry, that's the best I can give you. So, for Leopard Skin, LA Guns, I just can't recommend it. I can't. It's not a bad album overall, but when you have 10 songs and none of them stand out, but none of them are subpar, none of them are bad, but for the most part they tread upon familiar ground, familiar territory. I can't recommend that to you guys. I have to hold some standards high. You expect something out of me in terms of my expertise and my ability to sift through the wreckage and find you the best there is out there in music. It's close, but I cannot recommend Leopard Skin by LA Guns. There's just nothing new and nothing exceptional or exemplary out there on this album. Now, unfortunately, the three songs, for the most part, the three songs we have to review for you this week on top of LA Guns' album Leopard Skin aren't much better. First up is Green Day. And I have my problems with Green Day, you guys know. And as much as I try to separate the art from the artist, I hate Billy Joe Armstrong as a human being with a passion. I think he's a little jerk, pipsqueak, entitled. I mean, he just, every negative millennial insult I could throw at him is what, just put it in the basket. That's him. That's him. So now Green Day already, what, a year and a half, not even 2 years, after the release of Saviors, putting out the deluxe edition with extra bonus tracks and the revamped acoustic tracks. The first new, quote-unquote, new song from this Saviors expanded edition. And if you kids didn't listen to the initial review of Saviors, look it up in our archives on the Fortress of Rock. Not a big fan. Haven't been a big fan of Green Day since Revolution Radio. And I saw them on tour for that album and hated them. Overpriced, underwhelmed. Too much politics, not enough rock and roll. So we get Smash It Like Belushi is the first release from the expanded deluxe edition of Saviors. And I will say the same thing about this song from Green Day, and probably could apply to their last couple albums that I just said about LA Guns. Give me something new. Give me something different. Break out of your mold. You're not showing me anything new or different. Smash It Like Belushi sounds like a cookie cutter, paint by numbers Green Day song. I will say this, I actually think I have more respect for LA Guns and what they tried to do with Leopard Skin than I have for Smash It Like Belushi. We're going to put John Belushi's name in the title and in the chorus to make it sound really cool. Well, here's an idea. Why don't you figure out a way to make the song sound different from the hundreds of other songs you've put out? Find a new riff, a new chorus. a new hook. I did not like Smash It Like Belushi, and I cannot recommend it. And Billy Joe Armstrong needs to get away from worrying about the politics and start focusing on the music. Or he's going to fall into the same trap that guys like Bob Dylan and Neil Young have fallen into. And I'm sure he'd say, oh my God, I would love that. True music fans would not like that. Because at least with Green Day, we know what you were. We can look back and listen to the music where you were raw and vital and important. Yes, rebellious, and there's nothing wrong with rebelling against the system, but stop the same old, pathetic arguments. And I will still say, Billy Joe Armstrong is a nasty, awful human being. Now, the other two songs we have to review this week here are songs by bands that most of you don't know, but we push here on the Fortress of Rock. We're not getting any monetary compensation. These are just smaller bands that we like to promote because they're awesome. Usually. First up is the Cold Stares. The Cold Stares, been a big fan of them since a friend of mine introduced me to them a couple years ago. Unfortunately, their new song is not good at all. Dare I say it, even worse than Smash It Like Belushi. The Cold Stares, their new single is Hurting Side of Love, coming from their soon-to-be-released album, The Southern Part 2. Here's the thing with the Cold Stares. When they keep things in the nasty, hard, rocking, old-school blues territory, they're great. They're phenomenal. Hurting Side of Love is a blues ballad. And the one thing the Cold Stares do not do well, and I'm sure I'm picking on their frontman, lead singer, lead guitarist, but their lyrics are not deep. For the most part, their lyrics are the music equivalent of finding a prize in a Kellogg's cereal box. It's just predictable and generic. It's the music behind it that brings it to life. And when you dial everything down and you try to focus on the lyrics for the Cold Stares, that's a mistake. So Hurting Side of Love, I have to say, is one of the worst songs I've ever heard from the Cold Stares since I've been listening to them. Now, I will say the guitar solo is solid, as you would expect. But the rest, you could say the same thing about George Thorogood. George Thorogood is a fair comparison to the Cold Stares. If George Thorogood is not singing about drinking, cheating woman, and he does not have the heavy-duty guitar going behind it, George Thorogood can be boring. I'm sorry, he can be. And you can say the same thing, of course, about the Cold Stares. So the Hurting Side of Love, very dull. And I cannot, not even close to recommending Hurting Side of Love. Now, finally, I will say, our final song review of the week, The Black Moods, another small band that we love to listen to and review here on the Fortress of Rock. Daylight, their latest single. I do not like the way they do this. I've talked about this in the past. They've gotten into this pattern, and I know this is the more accepted way to release new music, is put out a song every 2 or 3 months, and maybe eventually after a year or two, yes, a year or two, put out the full album. So supposedly somehow we're getting a new album from the Black Moods called Passion. I don't know how. I don't know where. I don't know if you can get it physically, digitally. I don't know. That's bad marketing. That's terrible, awful marketing. And that's just a way to sink your band completely and totally. To frustrate your fans like me and not tell us how and when we'll be able to get the new album. Nonetheless, the new song from the Black Moods is Daylight. This might be the best of the songs they've put out. Again, the songs that look like they're going to comprise the next album, Passion. They have been going in a different direction for the most part with these songs. They've been overproduced. But Daylight harkens back to the old Black Moods from 6, 7, 8 years ago when I fell in love with them. Now, is it as good as some of the what I would call the classic Black Mood stuff? No, but it's much better than this new sound they've been putting out recently. So, of all the music I have reviewed this week here on the Fortress of Rock, the album, Leopard Skin by LA Guns, and the songs, Green Day's Smash It Like Belushi, The Cold Stare's Hurting Side of Love, and Daylight by the Black Moods. Daylight would get my most enthusiastic recommendation, and I don't even know how enthusiastic it would be. But of all of it, check out the Black Moods. The new song is Daylight. And so that will do it for Breakdown. Segment 2 is done here on the Fortress of Rock. So that means we head out to the garage. A little bit of nasty weather outside, but otherwise, temperatures are getting up into the 80s outside the Fortress here this past week. Looking like we're heading into late spring and summer. Thank God. So as Doc Brown fires up the rock and roll DeLorean and we prepare to head out into the rock and roll time stream, I will strap into the passenger seat and we will take care of some business here real quick on the Fortress of Rock. Now, I am trying my best. I'm still not going to promise, but I'm going to work my best to get us on YouTube. So possibly next week, we might finally get this sucker on YouTube. But for now, you can find the Fortress of Rock on Spotify, Pocket Cast, Apple, iHeartRadio, Overcast, Amazon Music, Castbox, Audible, and Good Pods. Then, of course, you have the Facebook page and our 2 weekend events. Sunday, we'll go Sunday and then come back to Friday. Sunday, New Music Sunday. We always post a link to a new YouTube video featuring a brand new song that we are encouraging you to listen to. We're not going to put garbage out there. We're going to give you the best. Most of the time tied into this episode and what we've got in Breakdown or what we've got coming up from Wrap It Up. So every Sunday afternoon, no later than 3 p.m., you will have a post, a link to a new video of a great new song, because we have to keep new music alive. That's what one of our primary goals here is on the Fortress of Rock, to keep rock and roll alive. We've got to do it together. We've got to watch these videos. We've got to listen to these albums on Spotify or wherever, Apple, wherever you stream your music, or buy it physically. We've got to keep the artists engaged, encouraged, and unfortunately, most of the time that's done by cha-ching, giving them money, directly or indirectly. Don't know yet what New Music Sunday will be. Have a few ideas floating around, of course, since we were shut down for 2 weeks. We have plenty of things now. Plenty of songs to pick and choose from, so it shouldn't be a problem going forward here throughout the summer to find a solid, good new song for you to enjoy on New Music Sunday every Sunday afternoon. Now, Friday nights, just about the time this episode has dropped, you will get the Weekend Rock Project. This is where I will give you a phrase, a word, or words, an idea, a concept, and you will turn around and give me your favorite, your best songs that fit the bill, that meet that criteria. Now this week, you're rolling the dice, you're betting it all, or you're betting nothing, or you're winning nothing, or you're betting everything. Let me clarify. Your Weekend Rock Project wants you to lay it all on the line. We want your best songs featuring the words all, everything, or nothing. So you're either betting it all, betting everything, and then you're coming back possibly with everything, or nothing. That is your Weekend Rock Project, which is out there right now as you're listening to this podcast. Once again, Facebook page, lots of fun stuff happening each and every weekend. And then, of course, when it comes to the news, the stories, the things we discuss, I do my best to pick and choose things through my rock and roll brain to titillate and excite you kids, but I have to have help, and I have to have sources. 3 main sources, especially for segment 1 and here in segment 3. Those sources are ultimateclassicrock.com, thisdayinmusic.com, and the Van Halen Newsdesk.com. So we are up to speed, so let us get into I Want to Go Back, segment 3, each and every week here on the Fortress of Rock, our tribute to the late, great Eddie Money. Birthdays and anniversaries, classic moments in rock and roll history. We'll start off with birthdays for April the 25th. Starting off with April the 25th, 1965. Birthday for Eric Avery, bass player for Jane's Addiction. Born on this day, April the 25th, 1958, Fish. Yes, very bizarre stage moniker. Fish, of course, was the lead singer for Marillion. Marillion had one of the most beautiful, awesome rock songs ever. Kaylee. Fish was the lead singer on that song. Throughout Marillion's, I guess you would call it, classic era, He was born on this day in 1958. Born on this day, April the 25th, 1950, Steve Ferrone. Steve Ferrone played drums in the Average White Band, but more significantly, he replaced original drummer Stan Lynch in the Heartbreakers. Yes, Steve Ferrone was the drummer throughout the last couple decades of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Born on this day, April the 25th, 1945, bass player for Creedence Clearwater Revival, Stu Cook. Born on this day, April the 25th, 1945, Bjorn Ulvaeus. Of course, one of the 4 core members of ABBA. Legendary guitarist, born on this day, April the 25th, 1923, Albert King. Then finally, born on this day, April the 25th, 1918, one of the greatest voices in music ever, the legendary, the fantastic Ella Fitzgerald. Again, born on this day in 1918. Anniversaries for April the 25th as we continue to plow through the rock and roll time stream. Now, this is one we reported a few years back on this podcast. April the 25th, 2023. Harry Belafonte passed away. Of course, most of us know him for the Banana Boat song. If you don't know the Banana Boat song, I'm not going to subject you. I've done it in the past. I know it doesn't go over very well. Not going to sing. Look it up, the Banana Boat song. You'll get it. Just look it up, listen, you'll get it. On this day, April the 25th, 2007, Bobby Boris Pickett passed away. Of course, Bobby Boris Pickett, responsible for the Monster Mash. On this day, April the 25th, 1997, U2 launched their massive Pop Mart tour in Las Vegas, Nevada. On this day, April the 25th, 1994, the Eagles recently reunited despite the quote, the eternally significant classic quote in rock history. I believe it was Glenn Frey, when asked, when will the Eagles get back together? When hell freezes over. So on this day in 1994, the Eagles played the first of 2 shows that were recorded and that would eventually be released for the LP Hell Freezes Over. On this day, April the 25th, 1990, Jimi Hendrix, the guitar he played at Woodstock, his Fender Stratocaster, was auctioned off for $295,000. On this day, April the 25th, 1988, former Kiss manager and at the time current Bon Jovi manager Doc McGee was convicted for drug smuggling, contributing to a shipment being moved into the United States of 20 tons of marijuana. Yet because he wasn't you and he wasn't me, he's a big shot with big shot lawyers. 20 tons of marijuana. Of course, remember, in 1988, very, very illegal. This was drug trafficking, drug smuggling. He got somehow a 5-year suspended sentence and a small fine. But then he did have to put together a nonprofit organization that had to raise money in the name of keeping kids away from drugs. And that led to a concert in Russia. In the end, though, I find this ridiculous that somebody could be an intermediary, directly involved still, but an intermediary in a massive drug smuggling ring involving 20 tons of marijuana and get off with that kind of sentence. And again, how are you and I, as normal, common people, supposed to think? The privileged get what they want, and the rest of us, we would have to pay the entire penalty. We would carry the full weight if we did something even remotely close to this. So every time I see Doc McGee pop up in rock and roll documentaries, I kind of just, I do want to smack him in the face a little bit and say, you piece of garbage, you should still be in jail for what you did. Haves and have-nots, the problems of the one percenters. On this day, April the 25th, 1987, we're going to revisit U2, coming back to Bono and The Edge and the boys. On this day in 1987, one of the greatest rock albums ever, legendary album, U2's The Joshua Tree, was the #1 album in the U.S. on this date in 1987. Going back to April the 25th, 1970, the Jackson 5, ABC, as easy as 1, 2, 3. ABC by the Jackson 5 was the #1 single in the U.S. on this day in 1970. On this day, April the 25th, 1967, at Abbey Road Studios, the Beatles recorded, not the album, but the song, Magical Mystery Tour. Then finally, on this day, April the 25th, 1960, not necessarily one of his biggest, most well-known hits, but the #1 U.S. single on this day in 1960 was Stuck on You by Elvis Presley. There you go, kids. That is I Want to Go Back for April the 25th, 2025. So now Doc Brown easing us into the garage here back at the Fortress of Rock, pulling up the drawbridge over the moat. Plenty of dandelions and weeds in the yard that I have to take care of. Ugh. I hate winter because of the cold and the snow and the ice. But the minute you get a day above 70 degrees, the dandelions and everything pops up and reminds you the cost of owning a fortress, the trials and tribulations of having the Fortress of Rock in my name. But again, I wouldn't have it any other way. So, we have segment 4 left as I am wandering back into the studio here at the Fortress of Rock. Lots to discuss here in segment 4, of course. Segment 4 is Wrap It Up, our tribute to the fabulous Thunderbirds, where we look to the future. We've looked to the past, just got done with that. Our first 2 segments deal with present day rock and roll. Now we look to the future. Gonna mix things up a little bit. Let's mix things up. Let's start off with the Fortress of Rock charts. Yes, the Billboard charts at one point in time were awesome, and they always seem to be accurate and relevant in terms of letting us all know what was being listened to. The albums, the songs, throughout the 70s, into the 80s, even into the early 90s, and then SoundScan came in and started to screw things up, and then streaming music completely destroyed everything. And so now, in a roundabout way, the Billboard charts do nothing but destroy enthusiasm in rock and roll. But that's okay. That's why we are here, to combat that. The Fortress of Rock charts will give you the best every week in terms of rock and roll. Now, normally, I will admit, it's going to tie in to what we reviewed on Breakdown. And at least for our number 1 album this week, that is no exception. Our number 1 album this week is indeed LA Guns' new album, Leopard Skin. But songs we tend to play around a little bit more with. We always pick 2 songs, not 1, but 2 songs, each and every week to top the Fortress of Rock weekly charts. We had a lot of songs that I was debating, going back and forth with. Some songs that have been around for a couple weeks, some songs that just debuted today out there in internet land. I would have been remiss. I would have felt terrible and awful with one of these songs if I did not put this at the top of the Fortress of Rock charts for the 2nd week in a row, because it is such an awesome song. And that would be The Hives' Enough is Enough. So The Hives' Enough is Enough will share honors this week with the ridiculously fantastic, awesome new song from Sammy Hagar. This is what we've been waiting years for. I still have problems and issues with it, but this is the Eddie Van Halen tribute that we've been waiting for. God bless Joe Satriani for doing his absolute best to pay tribute, to pay homage to the late, great Eddie Van Halen. And as much as I go back and forth with Sammy Hagar, and I try to not look at his ulterior motives, and at times I can't ignore it, and he can't be the easiest human being to get along with. This brand new song that came to him, his words, not mine, that came to him in a dream. It comes off as the ultimate tribute to his time with Van Halen. And so I respect it, and I admire him for this. It seems heartfelt. It seems genuine. So how could I not love it? We'll talk more about it next week when we give you a full review of Encore, Thank You, Good Night. Brand new song from Sammy Hagar, of course. Backing him, Michael Anthony, Kenny Aronoff, and of course, Joe Satriani. So once again, your number one album on our charts this week is Leopard Skin by LA Guns. Top songs are The Hives, Enough Is Enough, and Sammy Hagar's Encore, Thank You, Good Night. In terms of what we've got scheduled for the next month here on the Fortress of Rock, we are probably going to change things up from what I originally hoped and thought we were going to do. Because I'm looking a month out and we're going to hit another drought. We're going to hit another dry spell when it comes to albums. We do have some new albums. We talked about them last week, and we'll talk about them here again in a minute. But once we hit the end of May, we're going to hit a spot where there's just not a lot of new music. So what we might do, originally I wanted for next week's episode 192, dropping, of course, May the 2nd. I was going to review the new album from Billy Idol, Dream Into It. Could still happen, but I'm just going to give you fair warning. Might just do a ton of new songs, because when we get to those in a couple minutes, you'll see why. Maybe we need to knock out a lot of new songs, and we might be better served pushing Billy Idol back a week. And that will, of course, push everything else back a week as well. That would include the Spin Doctors' brand new album, Face Full of Cake, originally scheduled for episode 193 on May the 9th, and The Complete Sweets, Butter Miracle from the Counting Crows, which we originally had episode 194 on May the 16th. We might push those albums all back a week, because I'm not guaranteeing anything either way. If I listen to Billy Idol, because I do have the physical copy in my hot little hands as we discuss things here, you and me, sharing secrets here on the Fortress of Rock, on Friday night, April the 25th, I do have Dream Into It sitting here with me. If I listen to it this week and I decide it's worthy of a very fast, very quick, let's get it out there review because it's so awesome and fantastic, I might change my mind. So we'll see. But now, once I give you the songs that we have got here on our agenda to review over the next couple weeks, you'll understand why. Maybe, possibly, I think it's better for us to do the songs next week. Do half a dozen songs, knock those out, and then Billy Idol the week after, and so on with Spin Doctors and Counting Crows. So we've already discussed, very special to me, very important to me. It will be reviewed next week, come hell or high water, whatever we decide to do. Sammy Hagar's Encore, Thank You, Good Night will definitely be reviewed next week. And I will get into it more next week. My thoughts about this, because you guys know Van Halen, by far and away, my favorite band ever, all time. I am a David Lee Roth guy, but still respect and love and admire everything that Sammy Hagar has done as a solo artist and with Van Halen. So, Encore, Thank You, Good Night will be a featured review next week here on the Fortress of Rock. We mentioned the Alice Cooper group, not the solo act. Alice Cooper, the group from the early 70s, is back together after 50 years. First new single from their upcoming album, The Revenge of Alice Cooper, is Black Mamba. We'll have that for you here in the next few weeks on the Fortress of Rock. Brand new song from Honeymoon Suite. One of those bands that I felt was vastly overlooked and underrated in the 80s. Cover bands to this day still love to play New Girl Now, but there was so much more to Honeymoon Suite, and they're back putting out new music. Good to see this. Brand new song from Honeymoon Suite is Stay This Time. We'll have that for you within the next couple weeks here on the Fortress of Rock. Bush. We will be seeing Bush live in concert here in the fall. Late summer, early fall, August, in Indianapolis with Shinedown. Bush has a brand new album coming out. We mentioned this last week. I Beat Loneliness. The first single is 60 Ways to Forget People. And we will review that for you here on the Fortress of Rock very soon. And we will also dig into Shinedown. Not a band we normally would review here on the Fortress of Rock, but kind of getting into them now. Time to bring in a newer band. I know Shinedown's been around for, 15, 18 years? So they're not necessarily a quote-unquote new band, but for me they are. And for us they are, since we focus normally on classic rock. But Shinedown, the first two singles from their upcoming new album are out. Dance Kid Dance and 365. We will review both of those songs coming up very, very soon here on the Fortress of Rock. So reviewing two new songs from Shinedown, and we got two quote-unquote new songs from Bruce Springsteen. We discussed his massive upcoming box set Tracks 2, The Lost Albums. So he has now released two songs from that. Rain in the River and Blind Spot. And I will admit I've listened to Blind Spot a few times and I'm very intrigued by this song. Very impressed. Little bit different for the boss, but I love it. And it came very close. If it wasn't for Sammy Hagar and the Eddie Van Halen, what I would call a tribute song, and then the Pure Power of the Hives, those two songs were going to be almost impossible to knock out of the number one spot on our weekly charts, but Blind Spot came close. So once again, Bruce Springsteen, two songs from his upcoming Tracks 2 box set, Rain in the River and Blind Spot. Those reviews coming up in the next week or two here on the Fortress of Rock as well. We've got the Triumph tribute album Magic Power coming out soon. Now, right around the time we were forced to shut down for 2 weeks, I was going to review Sebastian Bach. The first release from this was Rock and Roll Machine, and now since then we have seen Dee Snider's take on Lay It on the Line come out. So both of those are fair game for reviews in the coming week or two here on the Fortress of Rock. Don Felder, we talked about The Vault, coming out soon from him. Former Eagles guitar player. His album will feature brand new songs he's found from his time with the Eagles that he has fleshed out and made them into full-fledged songs. The new release from The Vault is Hollywood Victim. Again, Look forward to reviewing that in the coming weeks. And then finally, I'm not sure if it's out yet. Mick Jones, the leader of Foreigner. I can't say the front man, because the front man is either Lou Gramm or Kelly Hansen, to me. Let's say the mastermind behind Foreigner, Mick Jones, has a solo song coming out called Shelter from the Storm. And there's a story behind this song. I don't want to give it short shrift. I want to give it its full due. So in the next couple weeks, we will explain more about this new song from Foreigner's Mick Jones, Shelter from the Storm. There is a great cause behind it, but I don't want to rush it. So I want to give you guys the full story behind it, and that'll happen in the next week or two here on the Fortress of Rock. But again, as you can tell, all those songs have now, we've got a backlog of songs we've got to review. We do have a few albums, but I'm leaning towards doing just a whole bunch of songs next week. Pushing back Billy Idol. I'll give myself more time to listen to that, so I give you a fair review. We'll see. We'll see. Trying to keep things structured yet fluid here on the Fortress of Rock. But that's going to do it for Friday night, April the 25th, 2025. Glad to have you back. Once again, I'll mention this for the last time. Very sorry about our forced vacation. Thankfully, not a permanent vacation through no fault of our own. Technology is wonderful when it works, and when it doesn't, it grinds things to a complete and total halt. But we're back. Everything is back to normal. The 4 segments each and every Friday night you know and love. Don't forget to check out the Weekend Rock Project on the Facebook page and New Music Sunday. And do not forget that we will do this again this coming Friday, May the 2nd, and every Friday for eternity, until the Maestro drops dead, or until the internet goes out again. I am the Ayatollah of rock and rolla, the Maestro Kevin Crane. You are who you are, and we love you for who you are. Take care of yourselves as we move into the summer months. Concerts, outdoors. Oh my God, the warmth of the sun. Great, it's glorious. Love the ones you're with. Get them outside. Enjoy it while you can. Until next Friday night, I'm the Maestro. Peace out.